Good. I'll unmute desktop audio and let's get going. So this is Wild Arms X Mario Maker, made in Super Mario Maker 2. This is a complete recreation of Wild Arms in the Mario Maker engine. Let's refer to it that way. Reintroduction for the YouTube clip, you know? This is for the highlight. LCC is a very eagle-eyed viewer who knew I went live accidentally for 7 seconds while I was recording all of my Mario making. And I was like, stop streaming. But apparently LCC caught that. So yeah, without further ado, let's get going. I think the audio level should be good. Is it too loud? Is it too loud or too quiet? So this is Berry Cave. This is the entrance. That's the statue you move with the switch. And I tried to make it so the enemies aren't too hard. It's the first level. I tried to, like, make it so the game itself has a bit of a difficulty curve. I was only live for like 7 seconds though. I wasn't live for an hour, was I? But anyway, so that's the sign you blow up. So I made like a big "Don't go here" sign. So use a bomb to get through it. This is the curse section where you run on the bridge and get cursed. So I made this sign to kind of distract you while there's spikes at the end to try to recreate the curse thing. This is the secret cave you get through with the bomb. I try to get in there, but fail. But no re-records here. Yet. And these are the 2 statues you have to move by pressing the switches in the right order. So I tried to kind of use 2 different types of switches, so you have to hit them in the correct order and also kind of have them both active to progress. And this is the bottom section of Berry Cave where you get to the boss fight. There's the one last wall you have to blast through with Tim there. And this is my first major use of the sound effects in Mario Maker 2. Create an atmosphere. And when you break the curse, oh my god, it's the zombie. And the zombie attacks. And being the first boss, it's just a blown up boomer. It's not particularly difficult. I initially used the course goals for the bosses, where you have to beat the boss to progress, but it seemed better just to give the bosses keys to progress. So you can have multiple bosses, and also you're not tipping your hand about what the stage is all about, and just have no course conditions. Didn't use any course conditions throughout this entire quote-unquote game. So next we got Memory Temple, Jack starting dungeon. So you start above ground and you failed the password in the game, so to recreate that, you press the switch and then get sent down into the underground here. And you just keep falling, kind of see the rest of the dungeon as you fall. And the goal is to make your way back up. Try and recreate the Memory Temple vibe. There's only, I think, like 6 or 8 different tile sets. There's a few, but the Ghost House tended to fit a lot of the dungeons. Ghost House and Desert in the Super Mario World tile set. So they're probably used the most, because they're most dungeon-like. So for, it was obvious in the first level, bombs are bombs for Rudy's tool. There's no very good equivalent to handpan. The closest is the shells. Exactly. The shells are handpan in this case, because they can kind of reach things that you can't. And they also come back, so it's kind of shell-like in nature. These are the big prongy things that come out of the walls. And this is the one section where you have to remove the blocks and then throw a hand pan. Shikuku's got the hand pan emote. Gotta get that Shikuku sub. And you gotta hit the switch to progress in the room with the Pokey Sticks. And the save point is actually there in the actual game. I tried to recreate where the save points actually are, where it makes sense. And these are the two switches you have to press to progress in the spiky portion. And I put those spikes under the floor to kind of represent the spikes that appear if you stand on them too long, so that's why they have the falling blocks there. And this is the switch where you have to stand on one of the switches and then use hand pan to hit the other, so you have to stand on the one on block and hit the other one with hand pan to try to recreate that. And that's how you get to the end of the dungeon, so that's where we have Seek Not here. And we start back where we started, or get back to where we started, but because of the on-off, we can now progress to the end of the dungeon, where we also finish the sentence, Seek Not Riritia. And I go for the 1-up, because why not? But I fail. Oh yeah, when I spliced everything together, I'm not sure if it was an issue with the MP4's OBS created or an issue with DaVinci Resolve, but occasionally there'd just be this piercing screech throughout the clips when I rendered the video. It had something to do with the transitions, but I couldn't quite figure out what was exactly causing them. I was able to get rid of most of them through kind of creating or making the transitions very big and clipping off a lot of the ends and starts of the clips. But there's still some in the final render, so I just kind of muted them all. Just went through the entire audio waveform, and whenever there was a big peak, I just muted that section. So there'll be some, like, split seconds of silence where there would be a screech, because they were probably, like, speaker destroying if people have a really big setup and have it kind of blasting. Oh yeah, this is sealed library, now that I covered that audio thing. So these are the first rooms where you gotta solve the various box puzzles. I think they recreate them pretty well. And this is where you have to burn the books. I recreated that with having the 4 red coins, and you having to throw the shells into the fire to hit the red coins. Shells are multi-purpose, they're not just hand pan as analogs, because there's a lot more... There's a lot of distinct stuff that do the same thing in Wild Arms that kind of can get distilled to single things in this game. This is Nelgal, you get the fire power to kind of represent Cecilia's magic. Again, it's a boomer. I made the hull tighter to make it a bit more difficult, but also easier because you have the fire power. And I actually get the 1-up. Oh yeah, I used the spooky audio effect because the sealed library is spooky. I use that effect occasionally when things are spooky. It conveys spookiness pretty well. So those are the 3 prologues done, and it's off to Lithias Tomb. But I didn't want to put lowly in my level title, so I went with the proper Riritia's Tomb. And this is the entrance. I tried to create like a dig atmosphere, so I used the kind of gray platform backdrop, and then the kind of wood stuff. I'm not sure what you call them when you're mining to prop up the ground from not falling on you. Buttresses? Something? So yeah, it kind of looks like a dig site, aesthetically, whereas the Lithias Tomb is a proper dig site in the game. Although in-game it looks more like a temple dungeon than anything. That's a combined thing where you have to use a bomb with Rudy to break a rock and then use hand pan to hit a switch, so represent that there. This is another form of that puzzle where you have to break a rock and there's a hand pan switch underneath, but you have to be behind the purple spikes that will raise up before Handpan hits the switch, otherwise you'll get stuck in there. So it's recreated using that. And the moles here are the rat monkeys because they're kind of rat monkey-like. They're the closest analog in the Mario Maker monster set. And just like in Wild Arms, there's a save point at the ladder section. I kind of like putting those enemies at high grounds, so when they throw their spike balls, they're really annoying. I use them pretty well all throughout the game. There's only so many monsters you can use, so you're pretty much using everything they give you. And this is the Dragon Room. I used a different tile set for this to signify you're deeper underground. This is spots the diggers haven't gotten to yet because it's where you find the Lithia. So you have to hit the switch on the back of the dragon to make the 4 boxes appear. So I put the P switch on the back of the dragon and made the 4 boxes appear, and you have to get the 4 red coins off the boxes before time expires. And this is Mag Tortoise, which is just Boomer with a electric Mecha Koopa on his back, because he is an electric tortoise. And I use the lightning sound effect, or kind of graphic effect as well, to make it very Meg Tortoisey. And this is Riritia. She's very big, so you just see her head encased in the ground there. And that's Riritia's Tomb. We get the 1-up. I tried to make sure it's reasonable to get the 1-ups at the end of the stage, not just make it flat ground and you're pretty much screwed. Oh, you could almost hear one of those spikes there. You could kind of hear it. But they were much louder in the original product and a lot more frequent. And this is Adohide Festival, the final level of the first world. So I try to recreate the festival games here. This is the mole game, where moles are just coming out of the ground. You gotta grab them all. And here's the target practice, where you gotta throw the bomb and hit the bullseye to progress. And then next is the chicken game, where you gotta hit the P switch and run. If you go too slow, you won't make it. If you go too fast, you'll run to those spikes. It's pretty easy not to hit the spikes, but chicken game nonetheless. And finally, the obstacle course, where you gotta hit the P switch and go through this little obstacle course here. There's a lot I gotta do in this level, so there wasn't much room to implement the obstacle course, but there it is. And this is the red balloon. And it explodes, signifying the start of some bad times. And oh no, the invasion begins! So this is Adohide Town with the mushroom houses with the locked doors. You can't actually get a key, it's just for aesthetic. So that's the invasion. So we escape the invasion into the sewer access passage. So this is the sewer access section. This is amazing. Had a lot to do in this one level. And I used the water dropping sound effect music overlay for this section to kind of, you know, it's the sewers. And when you get out of the sewers, it's Bells Out time. You're back in the Adohide town, and Bells Out's here. I don't actually know the name of all the Koopalings, but this guy was the most Bells Out-like. I tried to reserve the Koopalings for major encounters, like the Quarter Knights and the like. So I defeat Bells Out to progress, and of course we have the fake credits at the end of the invasion. Level Maker. Chaos. Based on Wild Arms. And those are the credits. And that's Adohide Fair. It's one of my favorite levels to implement in the entire game because of how much is going on in it. And that's World 1 completed. I will say Wild Arms really lends itself to this 5 levels per world pacing. It almost always works out very well. And so now we're in Mountain Pass. So, interestingly, I unlocked or found out about the night themes just as I was looking into making Mountain Pass, which is very fortunate because Mountain Pass's main gimmick is this limited view thing here, because Mountain Pass is dark. I have the lighter represented with a fire flower here. That's where you get the lighter. And the fire actually does help light up things. So, the one thing is that Mountain Pass is a cave, but I'm using the Ghost House because the Ghost House night theme is the one that gives you the darkness view here. So I had to make it a Ghost House on the inside. But on the outside, I use the dark theme for the desert, which actually works well for the outside where you get Sonic Buster, because you get the Sonic Buster hint because it's windy, and the night theme gives you wind. And I also put some tornadoes in there to represent where you get Sonic Buster. So this guy's kind of supposed to represent the lizard men, and these flying Koopas are supposed to be the harpies you fight outside. And this is the section in between the two mountains that forms the pass between the mountains. So now we're on the new continent with Malama. And we just got progressed down the other side of the mountain pass now. Oh, you'll love the gate generator section. And we need the bombs to progress through this section because this section has some rocks that block your way and you need the bomb. Bombs are used a lot because the bomb is the most obvious analog to Rudy's bomb in that no other tool is as directly represented as the bomb in this game. And the bugbears in Mountain Pass are represented by the small boomer there. And we're now past to the other side of Mountain Pass. So now we're in the Malama continent. And I got the 1-up. Ooh. And of course, after Mountain Pass is Guardian Shrine. Now, I tried to make the game kind of have difficulty. I don't like when a game just has a difficulty curve that's always going up. I like it to drop a little, then go up and reach a greater peak. But if there's any problem with the difficulty spikes in this game, it's this level. Where this level is kind of a jerk. First, there's the really hard puzzle here, where it says 2, 10, 6, 12 at the start, and you're supposed to interpret that as this being a clock, and you have to hit 2, then 10, then 6, then 12 to progress. If you hit any of the blocks that aren't in that sequence, you'll get killed because the floor underneath you will drop and you'll get hit by the spikes. And if you do it in the wrong order, you'll basically be screwed because you'll lose the item that you need to progress through the next section of the sequence. So you have to do it in the proper order, and that's the only way to get the key here. So it's kind of a esoteric puzzle at the start, but it does reliably recreate the 2, 10, 6, 12 puzzle at the start of Guardian Shrine, so it was really fun trying to recreate that puzzle using the kind of limitations of the Mario Maker engine here, because there's no state in Wild Arms. The closest you can have to state is the on-off blocks here, where the state is either 0 or 1, but you can't have anything more complicated than that. This is the room where you have to light the different torches to progress, so I just use the on-off blocks to represent you lighting the different torches, and you have to hit them in the right order to progress. And these are the separate trials for Rudy, Cecilia, and Jack. You gotta complete each of the 3. Now, Cecilia's is mostly just pushing blocks, and you have to be pushing the block down the right path, so to represent that, I have the 2 blocks going, and you have to go down the right path. One of them is blocked, so it's a pretty direct analog to Cecilia's trial. Cecilia's trial is very easy, so I try to make it a bit more complex by making it more block pushy here to kind of give it more depth. So you kind of gotta progress in a way where you're able to get past the blocks without getting pushed back. And you get the red coin to signify that you completed that trial. Next is Jack's trial, where it's a lot of hitting switches with handpan that you would otherwise not be able to hit. So we have a bunch of green Koopas spawning. When you put a green Koopa in a pipe, it keeps respawning even if it's on the field, whereas if you put a red Koopa, it won't spawn. So using green Koopas makes it slightly more difficult. I use the blue pipes so they don't come out super fast, so they aren't just constantly spawning and getting on top of you really quick. I use the green pipe here so they'll come out slightly faster, and use the P-switch to represent the 2 different switches you have to progress through that section. And if you're fast enough hitting that second block, you don't have to hit the second P-switch there, which I did, so that is Jack's trial, and the last one is Rudy's trial, where he has to use bombs to progress down the right path. The first room is just a one-to-one path, like it is in Rudy's trial in the game, so it's just a bunch of giant bombs he has to hit. There is a bit of difficulty because they are already activated, so you don't want to be near them when they explode. And they're also big, so they have big explosions. I use blue pipes for the first 2, so they don't really get on top of you, then a yellow pipe to kind of increase the difficulty in that room. And the second room in Rudy's dungeon, you have to guess which rocks are the one you blow up to progress, because otherwise they'll have, like, a hole underneath them that you can't get through. You can actually see which one you blow up if you look really close underneath the gray blocks, because you can see where the bumper is if it's on the left or right side, so you can kind of see which one you have to blow up if you really look. And I use the different pipe speeds to increase the difficulty of each of the sections here, and they're already activated bombs to kind of increase the danger. So yeah, you just gotta know which one to blow up to progress. And that's Rudy's trial, just had 3 iterations on that, Miyamoto style. And with the trials, you meet the Guardians, so that's completion of the Guardian Shrine. And I didn't get the 1-up. I should say, this morning I woke up with a sore throat because I talked so much yesterday. So, apparently I need to talk more because I've gotten to a point where just talking destroys my throat. So, we'll see how I do tomorrow morning. And this is Mount Zenim. First we start with the Baskar Village pyramid, where you try to do the Hope Guardian test, but you get rejected, so you get the rejected noise at the top of the pyramid there. Next we're in Mount Zenim proper. We're at the entrance here. And just kind of messed with this tile set. This is one of the rare times I use the snow tile set because it's rarely appropriate. In fact, I think this might be the only level that uses the snow tile set. Actually, that's not true. But for the most part, this is the only level. There's one that uses it a bit. But we're using both the night version and the day version. The day version is at the outside, and the night version is inside. The main difference with the night version is it's got more of this is the night version, so it has a slightly different aesthetic, and also it makes the ground ice, physics-wise. And the outside is non-icy, it's because it's all covered in snow. And the main gimmick with Mount Zenim is you have to move statues in place to progress, or it's one of the main gimmicks. So here you have to move the green blocks so that the statue can hit the P-switch so that you can go through the door. If you don't make it to the door in time, you can reset the room by going in and out of the other door. So you can't soft lock yourself. The other gimmick is burning the hay with the lighter, so that's represented here with the piranha plants being easier to get through if you have the Fire Mario power-up. Here we have the Meteor Dive hint, where you have the 5 Heelberry chests followed by the boulder that comes at you. So I had the big guy there throwing snowballs. Interesting thing is that the big guy, I don't know his actual name, I'll call him big guy, lizard guy, throws snowballs in the snow tile set instead of regular spike balls. And the snowballs don't actually kill you, they just kind of bounce you around. That big bomb or bullet bill was meant to represent the red dragon, because that was one of the rooms that you can encounter red dragons in. And there are a bunch of secrets in the outside, like there are in the Wild Arms Mount Zenim, where you can fall down and get additional items and then make your way back up. I didn't show all of them off because I was like, I wanna get through the stage. At this point in the recording, I wanted to do everything single segment level-wise. That's the statue that's been broken, by the way. That's the statue seal. And this is Orga Widow. Very much a faithful recreation of Orga Widow. So you just gotta make it through the spinning spiky things to hit the block to destroy the Bow Wow that has a key associated with him. And that's how you beat the Orga Widow boss and beat Mount Zenim. For the most part, I try to use the actual boss character for bosses. I occasionally use level assets to create bosses instead. But they always come out goofy, which are kind of funny, but I didn't want to overuse them. But they are great whenever they do appear. Next is Cage Tower, so we got the big tower there at the entrance, and you enter using a pipe there to represent you're going inside the tower. So this is kind of similar to Memory Temple in that you're starting at the bottom of a vertical stage, working your way up in the Ghost House tile set. Works really well for Cage Tower because you are in a tower, so it makes sense that you're in this large vertical space. And the first room, there's a switch where you have to hit before you can go through the door, so that's represented there. One of the more unique enemies in this dungeon are the Hellhounds, where they're dogs that shoot fire, so they're represented by the fire Mecha Koopas. Sup, Zocker? Hello. Sup, Super Taco Blaster. And here are the falling platforms that are also present in Cage Tower. And this is where you get Prism Laser, or Prism Ray, represented by the Fire Flower. There's not a whole lot of ways to represent arms, because there's just the Fire Flower power-up, basically, so whenever you're supposed to get a arm upgrade or arm instance, you just get a... Oh, I don't play levels, I just make them. So that's where you have to hit the switch to progress on the falling platform section. So this is a weird one where it says the sun, and this is to represent the puzzle where you have to rise and fall with the sun. So that's the hint. And the doors here are, so when the sun rises, you go into the eastern door, and when it sets, you go through the western door. So that recreates the puzzle in Wild Arms, kinda. If you go through the wrong door, it'll just send you to another room that will send you back to the original room. And here's the last little bunch of staircases to get to the outside section of Cage Tower. So now we're on the outside at the top, so we climb up, and this is Night Gaunt. The fire bars are meant to represent Night Gaunt's laser attacks. They're originally longer, but that kind of made this boss a real jerk. And I gave him wings to represent the fact that Night Gaunt's a flying enemy. And now we're back at Saint Centaur, and it's been invaded. Dog represents I'm using the night theme, and the dog is just present in night themes. And there's the broken statue, the second statue. You can actually see the complete statues and the thumbnails of the levels, but there's no way to see thumbnails in the world view, so you can't actually see the completed statues. And the final level of this world is the Maze of Death, the final statue section. So the Maze of Death is interesting because it's a non-linear dungeon. You can go to one of 4 different sections, so I have 4 different sections accessible from the start. In this main hallway, and you have to go through the different sections to move the 5 statues, so I have that represented here by using the green blocks to move the statues to get one of 5 red coins. So gonna be progressing through this dungeon. This is the staircase section. Kind of want to make it a bit dangerous, so threw in the ghosts. It's also appropriate because there's a bunch of ghost enemies in this place. And here's another statue you gotta move. That guy, I didn't notice he hit the switch in this recording. So I wanted to kill him and then hit the switch, but I didn't realize he had already hit it, so I go back here and it's like, oh, right. He was a bro, and I didn't even know it. This is 3 out of the 5 statues. This level originally was extremely difficult. I had to kind of calm it down. I kind of reduced the number of enemies a little bit to make it more of a puzzly thing than a super difficult level. And that one section down there, the section below me right now, in the original Maze of Death, it just has a bunch of items, so if you go down there, there's no statue. There's just power-ups and a 1-up to represent that little section. And this is the final statue you have to move. They're more or less in the actual positions they are in the actual game, as much as I could represent the layout of Maze of Death. Maze of Death is kind of tricky because it's very... it uses the top-down perspective a lot, whereas this is a side view, so it's a bit tricky to fully recreate Maze of Death, but did what I could. I didn't put in the Chaos fight because there'd be no real incentive to fight an optional boss. So instead, I just have it progress straight to the Sweet Candy once you complete the Maze of Death. And now we're at the wedding sequence. I use the romance overlay and also the boos and cheers to represent the crowd booing and cheering as you answer the questions. And the 2 Koopas here represent Bartholomew and the priest, and you're Cecilia walking down the aisle. And Bowser Jr. is, of course, Zed. And this is Zed's theme. The Super Mario 64 slide, which I felt was appropriate for Zed. And I kind of make quick work of him. But he was a distraction. And if you go to the back of the boat, you'll find that the final statue seal has been broken. And that is Maze of Death. One thing is that because the stage started in the underground, I had to go back there, even though thematically it doesn't make much sense. But such are the limitations of the Mar make. So that is World 2? Yeah, World 2. Yeah, that's the fat draw. And now we're at World 3. Use the desert theme because, well, start with Sand River, then go to Pleasing Garden. There's a lot of kind of deserty feel to this section of the game. So, Sand River, I did a bit of a different thing. It's more of a thematic approach to the recreation where I used conveyor belts to represent the shifting sands. And the bottom of the stage is all conveyor belt that's going backwards, so if you ever land, you are sent back to the start of the stage, so you gotta kind of recover. And I also made the timer very short to make it kind of a speedrunny stage. So you have to kind of go through the Sand River as fast as possible. These are the Toadstool enemies. Yeah, it's a very quick stage, and more of a thematic recreation, more so than a one-to-one. I try to do one-to-ones, but sometimes it made more sense to be thematically recreating stages, like here. Because I never really liked Sand River as a dungeon. I like the shifting sands part, but actually playing it, it's kind of whatever. So, that's what I did with Sand River. Next up, we got Pleasing Garden. And Pleasing Garden is all about kind of illusionary stuff. So we start in the desert and get sent up into the floating island. And in the actual Pleasing Garden, there's 2 entrances, and if you go in one, it'll look like you're in the same room when you go through, but when you exit in the other pipe, you'll end up back at the start. So what I did is recreate the entrance. So if you do go the wrong way, you'll look like you're back at the entrance, but you're actually in a complete recreation of it. So you have to go through the proper route to progress to this part. This is recreating where you have to go through the right window. And I had the correct pipe represented by the pipe that actually goes all the way down, so you know which pipe to go through. And the save point's where it is in the actual level. I threw in a power-up here just because, you know, gotta throw in power-ups every now and then. So here's the room where If you go through it and then go back through it, you end up in a different room that looks the same, so that's represented by this, where I've recreated the room but made it so that the state of the blocks is the opposite of the state in the previous room, so you reverse the state, so now you can climb it in this room, and you're able to get the key to progress by doing that. And then you're back in this room, and then you can progress to the boss room, which is the Gig Mantis room, where you have to use bombs to get Gig Mantis out of the sand. So I think this guy's Roy? He has a unique property where he'll dig into the ground, so he's perfect for representing Gig Mantis, digging into the sand. And I have the bombs coming out here, so you can use the bombs to fight him like you use the bombs to lure Gig Mantis out. So this is one of the rare times I used one of the Koopalings to represent a regular boss instead of a primary antagonist. But it was just a perfect gimmick for Gig Mantis, so made use of him there. And you go back to ground to complete Peace and Garden. And of course, next up is Ghost Ship, which Mario Maker is well equipped to recreate because it has a ghost ship level design by basically using the Night Ship tile set for the outside and then using the Night Ghost House on the inside, which recreates the limited vision that the ghost ship has on the inside in the actual game. And this is the first major use of the grapple hook here, which I represent with the claw thing there. So whenever there's a grapple hook section, I'll basically be using those claw hook things, because they're the closest analog. And that dry bones coming out of the chest is to represent all the skeletons you can talk to. Some of them are the way to progress, some of them are fights. So I kind of use the dry bones to represent all the skeletons in the ghost ship, as well as the traps you can fall into. And ghost ship is pretty short, just like in-game. This section here is the curved room. I kind of use these guys to make a bit of a challenge here because you have to progress as the circle is rotating there to the different blocks. And there's a section here where you can get a lucky card, but in-game where I think you just get a 1-up there, so I just ignored it. And here's Captain Geist. Kind of a ridiculous implementation of a boss, but Captain Geist was pretty ridiculous. The one thing with the nighttime ghost ship is it makes everything super slow, so that's why everything is moving super slow here. And to represent the light weakness that Captain Geist has, you have to get the star to defeat this boss. So you have to progress through the stage while preventing Captain Geist from getting too close to you and getting the star power up, and then killing Geist to get the key. And that's how you beat the ghost ship. Do I get the 1-up though? I do! At this point in the Wad Arms game, you can either go to Tri-Pillar or Volcanion Trap. For game design purposes, it makes more sense to get Tri-Pillar as the thing that doesn't end the world, because Volcanion Trap is a better world-ending stage. So that's why Tri-Pillar is first. So Tri-Pillar is kind of a thematic recreation more than a literal recreation, where I have these 3 separated stages in a vertical ghost house layout. And I use different kind of tricky tricks to represent the different little puzzly things that the Tri-Pillar has. So I tried to get a little screwy with the different puzzles here, but not so screwy that they're kind of impossible to progress through and being super esoteric. There's always kind of a hint, because you naturally try to jump up here and hit those blocks, so even though they're hidden blocks, they kind of are things you would run into accidentally. So you kind of figure out, hit the one hidden block to get here, then go here. And then, to kind of make a wacky interaction between the different paths, I use these pipes to spawn the spike balls to rotate the platforms here. The problem with these is that they're not global, so whenever they're off screen, they stop spawning. So it's kind of tricky to get them to work properly at every part of the stages, because they'll get cold really quickly. But then if you put in too many, they get misaligned and start causing them to get out of sync and causing the platforms to kind of start switching like crazy. So you don't want to put too many in, but you don't want to put so few in that they get cold and you kind of get stuck depending on where you are. And I didn't want to make this real effort to finish, so I put a feather at the start of each path. Because you don't want to complete 2 of the paths, then die at the start, and then be like, oh, I gotta do the 2 paths. So here, you go through that door and you see the blocks, but you're blocked at the top, but they're to signify that there's hidden blocks on the other side. Here, you have to wait for the spike block to rotate to get up here. And I'm very good at this. And I use the Monty Mole cousins, I don't know what they're called, to represent the gremlins you run into with the wrenches, because they throw wrenches, so they're kind of like the Wild Arms wrench enemies. So here's the closest I got to kind of the calling issue here, where I have to be over here to get to rotate because I was too far to the right. I actually called all the available pipes, so I wasn't able to progress. So this is the biggest issue with this pipe mechanic. I didn't think it was too bad because you can kind of figure out, but there was a bit of an issue with that design. But I think as a player you'd be able to figure out. It's just you have to be aware of the game's mechanics to progress, which is probably what most game designers try to avoid, where it should be intuitive rather than something you have to suss out. But anyways, close enough. So again, we got more calling here. I use the enemies as a way to kind of make them more interesting, where they kind of get gated by the calling or the switch rotations. I use that one red block to prevent the big mole from coming at you before you are able to see him, to try to make it not super messed up. So those are the 3 paths for the tri-pillar, which lets you progress because you get the 3 red coins, which gets you the key. And now it's just the Mage Fox fight. There's a save point. There's not actually a save point in the actual level there. I improved the design. So the fire things meant to represent all the tails. I made them different lengths so that you're able to kind of run through without getting caught. And then you just have to hit the switch to kill the Mage Fox and get the key. There's only 8 tails, so it's not a 9-tailed fox. But in the game, he only has like 5 tails, so I didn't get the one up. That one's kind of tricky, because once you jump down, I'm not sure if you can get back up. Yeah, I thought it worked out pretty well with the lengths and the way they kind of rotated. It looks kind of messed up when you first enter the room, but then you quickly see that there is a clear window where you can run under it pretty easily. So the final level of this world is Volcanion Trap. So this is interesting. This is the big bomb you use to get through the stage. So represented pretty one-to-one there. And this is the kind of hallway when you're first entering Volcanion Trap. And then this is the room with all the lava. Put this guy in here just kind of because there's a high ground, just to make it a good... It's a good enemy to use for high grounds. The fat hammer Koopa. And there's different sections in the lava room with different treasures, so I put a bunch of treasure in that room, but nothing super necessary. And the next lava room has a bunch of grapple hook things, so that's represented by the hook hands here, and that fire flower there is where you get the rocket launcher. And I'm very good at jumping, apparently. This wrench thrower was really throwing a wrench in the schemes. And there's 2 pathways after the big lava room. One is to the treasure section, where you leave Jane, so all those blocks there represent the treasure that Jane wants, and you have to go there first, so that's why I put that block there to force the player to go there first. And then next you go over here and get Z2, which is Bowser Jr. comes out of nowhere to fight you. So that's kind of a fun entrance Bowser Jr. has. It's kind of like Z2's entrance, where he just kind of blasts through the wall. And you defeat him to progress. And I put that other block there to kind of make it harder to kind of get through without make it so that Z isn't seen too early. That's why I put it there. Then the save point between Z2 and Bowser 2. So this is Bowser 2. For the 2 fights, I tended to just give the Koopalings wings to make them a bit more difficult. But Bowser 2, this game isn't too difficult. I'd also put the flames coming up to kind of represent the fact that he was on the lava bridge, and also to kind of make it more difficult. So this is interesting. I've recreated the entrance that we entered, but this is actually a completely different room, because when you go to Volcanion Trap, you actually exit out. And so you exit again and go through here, and watch this. So that's Boomerang, and it kills Belzelk. So that represents Boomerang throwing his boomerang to kill Belzelk at the end of Volcanion Trap. So, rest in peace, Belzelk. And that is World 3 completed. And next we have World 4. It's where we'll end up going to Photosphere. So it's represented by the snow world layout because of Antarctica and all that. Or Arctica, rather. First level is Giant's Cradle. The blue and red, I didn't mention at the time, but the blue mouse was represented at the end of Tri-Pillar with an ice block. And the red mouse at the end of Volcanion Trap was represented by a red block. So I put them next to the door to represent the fact that you got them both from Tri-Pillar and Volcanion Trap to access Giant's Cradle. So this is kind of a... I recreated some, but not all of the rooms in Giant's Cradle, because there's a lot of rooms and not all of the puzzles were translatable. So I put a bunch of these rooms to represent the in-between rooms where you're kind of running around the square elevator. So I made a bunch of these rooms to represent the square elevator that Asgard rises through. And then a bunch of these puzzly rooms. And they're kind of thematically recreations, but not direct recreations of all the puzzles. Here's the part where you have to run through the hallway with all of the spears coming out of the wall, but you have to avoid the pit in the middle. And here's another elevator room. Here's another one of the rooms where there's a spear, but if you run too much in the Wild Arms room, you end up going into a pit. So to represent that, I put a spear at the end that will hit you if you just keep running. And I actually use the coins to hint to the player that you're supposed to jump there, so they'll see the coins going up, so they'll know that they need to jump before they actually see the spike that's gonna kill them. I was actually watching some level design videos from Mario Maker, and they're mostly good, but the one thing a lot of them said was that coins were useless for making levels, but I find the coins are kind of good at hinting at the intended path in some cases, like there, so that's some good usage of the coins. For the most part, I just kind of put them there to give the player something to do, but sometimes they're good at hinting at what you're supposed to do before the player ends up dying. So next we got Epitaph C. To represent the win coin here, I just have a P-switch that sends the giant thwomp into the pit. It's pretty hard to recreate the win key, so... I think it's actually supposed to be wind key, because it winds up the machine and causes it to explode. But I always just call it the win key, because it's spelled wind, even though wind and wind are spelled the same. So this is the dungeon where the main mechanic is the conveyor belts, so obviously using conveyor belts in this level makes the most sense. This is the big room with all the conveyor belts that you need to hit the switch to progress, so pretty one-to-one recreation here. And there are a couple of treasures you can get in that room, so recreate them with a 1-up and a mushroom. The only two really viable things you can give. This is the Luciad room, where you have to progress through the room in the exact way that Luciad wants you to. So I painstakingly recreated Luciad's path using the various one-way contraptions. To make it a bit less of a non-thinker, I put in these on-off switches to kind of make it so that you have to think about the path you use and whether or not you want to use the on-off switch and which way to go after you use it. So that's the way to recreate the Luciad stage. So the way to recreate the rollerblade and the need for the rollerblades are to use the conveyor belts that are controlled by the on-off switches, because red means they're going a certain way when it's on, and they'll go the opposite way when it's off. So hitting that switch is equivalent to getting the rollerblades in this context, because it means you're able to go through this conveyor belt where otherwise you wouldn't be able to go through it fast enough to avoid the saw blades. So that's the equivalent of getting the rollerblades in Epitaph C. And here you climb and hit the save point. That's not quite where the save point is in the original Epitaph C, but it's a good place for it. If I were to recreate Epitaph C, that's where I'd put the save point. And here's the blast charge hint, where you have to do 5 wine keys, so I recreated, or 3 wine keys to get the blast charge hint, so I just use the same mechanic at the start of the dungeon. And this is where you get the rune drive, which causes the boomerang fight. So I've recreated the boomerang fight by using Lemmy, which is the vanilla Koopaling. It's the most basic one. And a large lightning Mecha Koopa to represent Luciad, because Luciad uses lightning attacks. So, kind of to balance out the fact that you're fighting 2 people, I use the most basic of Koopalings. So that's the first boomerang fight, and then you complete Epitaph C afterwards. And of course, after Epitaph C, we have the Sacred Shrine section. And this is one of my favorite levels. So I've used the spooky overlay to represent that something has gone wrong. I use the off switches there to represent the barrier that has gone down, because the barrier prevents monsters from getting in, so the fact that it's down means that the monsters have gotten in. And I've one-to-one recreated Sacred Shrine's layout. So over here is where you have to use handpan to get the first hints. So I have a red key, or a red coin key, off screen, and you have to use the shell to hit the coin off screen. So it's kind of not obvious that you have to do that, but if you kind of think about it for a while, you'll figure it out. And this is where you get the second hint, by talking to the kid. And since talking to the kid is pretty basic, I just have it as a red coin key here. And the actual layout of Sacred Shrine, with the main room leading 3 different ways, and you can go whichever way you want to get the hints in any order, is recreated here. And this is the main room where you can talk to everybody, and there's a barrel in that section where you can get coins, and also another barrel you can get Gela in the corner here, so I represented it with those 2 things there. And then this is the room where if you go in here, you find the dog. Everyone remembers the dog. Oh my god! So I recreated the dog using the conveyor belt to represent its tank treads, the cannon to represent the fact that it's a tank, and the big Koopa to kind of represent it's a freakish turtle thing. So I use it to kind of shock you the way the dog transforming shocks you. And that's how you get the final hint there. And then once you get the 3 hints, you're able to progress to the Alhazad fight. So Alhazad is this Koopaling. I don't know this guy's name. But to represent his Esperanza attack, I have the 3 lightning Mecha Koopas on the floating red Koopas, which are kind of the floating things that Alhazad has that he uses for his lightning attacks. So it makes sense to have those recreated as those things. And when you defeat Alzad, that is the end of the stage. So that was one of the most fun to recreate with the 3 different hints and the kind of non-linear layout the level has. And the next stage is actually Photosphere. This is the first time I break up a section of Wild Arms into 2 different levels. So this is Photosphere Outer Shell. So you start off outside in a nighttime snow layout. And that's the Photosphere represented by the red blocks, which you destroy by using Asgard's arm there. And I put a checkpoint right there because it's kind of stupid if you die here to have to do all of that over again. Even though it only takes like 5 seconds, it's fun the first time, but it doesn't make any sense to force them to do it again. Here I'm recreating the damage tiles by having the fire going up with the conveyor belt. And you have to use the bomb to reverse the conveyor belt to enable you to get past the damage tiles. And I have to do it again in the second room to get past the next set of damage tiles. And I throw a kind of curveball here where I have the second set of conveyor belts going opposite, so you have to hit that on-off switch there to progress without getting damaged. Now next is where you have to get the Hardy Apple to progress, so I have it represented by that block there and getting the P-switch. Usually I don't have progress locked behind a block, because once the block is used, it's gone. So in the case, if you accidentally threw that P-switch into the lava, this is the stair section, by the way, where you're going up the stairs to get the teardrop. But I don't usually like using the blocks, because then if you really mess up, you can't progress, you kind of soft lock yourself. But in that case, you have to open up a chest to progress in the actual dungeon, so it kind of made too much sense to do it there. And there's a checkpoint right there in case you do mess up, so you can just jump in the lava to reset the block. So the equivalent of getting the teardrop back is getting that key. So then you gotta go back down the stairs once you get the teardrop/key. And now you can go to the end of Photosphere, which has the section with the searchlights. And to represent the searchlights, I use these giant flying red Koopas because they kind of move in a searchlight pattern. There's no good equivalent to the searchlight, is basically what I'm saying. These were as close as you can get. And once you get past the searchlights, that's the end of the outer shell of Photosphere. And you end up in this frozen section to represent the fact that you're going into the Lithias section. So the next level, then of course, is Photosphere, the boss fights of Lilithia and Mother Demon. So I call this section Photosphere Inner Sanctum, and it's the end of World 4. Which makes sense because Photosphere is kind of the halfway point of the actual game. So this is Lithias, recreated in all her glory. I'm kind of trying to recreate her different attacks throughout this this level. So this is Freezing Zone, where everything's kind of frozen solid. This is the part where she kind of blasts out a bunch of freezing stuff. I use the lightning because even though it's not ice attack, it has the blue, so it kind of looks like an ice attack. And recreated Lithias. She's a stone golem, so it kind of makes sense. And ultimately, to defeat Lithias, you just have to hit the on-off switch, which opens up the path to the second section of the level. And this here is the Mother Demon fight. So this is the most, let's call it experimental level design. I rarely use auto-scrolling sort of things like this. But it made sense for this specific boss fight. That's Mother Demon's face right there on the left, and she laughs at you because that's what Mother does. I use the 3 paths here to represent the 3 different characters. You're kind of switching between the 3 paths like the 3 different characters would attack. And the various obstacles here are kind of meant to represent the different attacks Mother Demon is throwing at you throughout the fight. So it's just kind of a wacky level here. And those are the various magic attacks Mother Demon will use, represented by the wizards there. There's not always a one-to-one to the different attacks, because she only has 4 different attacks in her first incarnation, so just kind of threw what made sense in an auto-scroller context at you. The level kind of gets messed up here if you don't take out those electric Mecha Koopas, because you'll just kind of be stuck on the middle platform, just kind of ducking, hoping nothing kills you, as everything is trying to get you. So, if you want to see splicing at its finest, look no further. I did not do this section in a single segment. I did because I did an upload of it, but not for the recording, so I just kind of spliced together some different attempts here. So this is the final section of the Mother fight where you have to blast Mother's face with the giant lightning Mecha Koopa. And she kind of laughs at you as you're doing it. So once you blast through the bottom part, you're able to get through to this leap of faith here. So I use the heartbeat to kind of create a leap of faith scenario. And you make it to the end. And you've defeated the Mother Demon, so you get a bunch of fireworks. So that's the first half of Mario Maker X Wild Arms Down. And fittingly, it ends on Photosphere. And I'm going to refill my drink real quick. So next section is Dragon Shrine. So the main part of Dragon Shrine is that you start off on the sweet candy, because you have to get there by boat and then use the Guardian hint to enter the underground underwater shrine. And the one thing Wild Arms can't really make is an underwater level, but Mario Maker can. So the one cool thing, I mean, water levels notoriously suck, but the one cool thing about water levels is it lets you move in more of a top-down manner. So for the more top-down puzzles in Wild Arms, you're more able to recreate them with an underwater level. And thematically it makes sense for the Dragon Shrine because it literally is underwater. And using the pillars, I've kind of recreated the aesthetic of Dragon Shrine because it's a lot of pillory blue tile sets. And this is the block pushing puzzle here, using the different swamp directions to recreate the block pushing sequence you have to do to get through this specific room. And using the one-way contraptions to protect you from the thwomps just blocking you. And here's the checkpoint. That's exactly where it is in the original level. And this is the section where you're going through a bunch of different block pushing puzzles to get all the crest graphs and then later on the water pot. So I've kind of made it so that you have to do the block puzzles to progress through this section rather than them being optional, because you can't really recreate the crest graph rewards, because there's not very many rewards you can give in Mario Maker. They're also pretty simple block pushing puzzles. You have to trigger the different thwomps in the correct order in order to progress, basically. So this one, you have to trigger this one, and then you have to trigger the other one before the first one moves back so that you can stop it and have enough time to go up. And then this one, you have to trigger the far one and then get to the close one quick enough before the far one resets and prevents it from getting past the one-way contraption. And for this, the water pot's just represented by a key because there's no real analog to the water pot in Mario Maker. So I just locked progression by having it as a key. And I use these one-way contraptions so you don't have to go through all the effort of going through that section again on the way back. So then you return to the checkpoint area, and can progress. And I gave a power-up here. Whenever there's a Harken fight, I try to give the cape, so that... Well, this time I gave the cape for melee, to represent Jack. So this is the other block pushing section where it's pretty simple, you just have to push the different blocks like it is in Mario. Wild Arms, it's not very difficult, it's just kind of a fake danger zone. And then we progress to the Lady Harken fight. I used the one female Koopaling to represent Harken because there's not enough representation in the Koopalings. There, I said it. I had to reuse the one female Koopalings for Elizabeth because I was like, well, it's the only female Koopaling, so I have to use Elizabeth as a distinctly female fight. So that's Lady Harken 1. She's pretty simple. It's kind of difficult if she jumps up on one of those top platforms. You have to kind of hide behind one of the spikes there to prevent her from jumping up and hitting you while she's recovering. So it's not as easy as I make this look. Because I suck at this game, so that level took me forever to get a clean record on. So that's the main reason I did this as a pre-record, because otherwise we'd be here for 10 hours. Generously. Next up is Demon's Lab. This is another section where you could do one dungeon or the other first. Demon's Lab makes more sense to do first, I think. Even though it means you fight Lady Harken back to back. But in terms of difficulty spikes especially, Demon's Lab is pretty easy compared to Dead Sanctuary. There I recreated the elevator section or sections in Demon's Lab by just having an elevator go down. Since, you know, that's all it is aesthetically. So I used the one up there to represent Revived Fruit because, you know, one-to-one, and the bazooka was the Fire Flower, then another elevator section. And this room, there's not a whole lot to Demon's Lab, so I just kind of went off on this room. Just kind of made my own thing there. Another elevator. And save point. That's where the save point is in the actual dungeon. This room, it represents the Demon Gate password room. How you're meant to get the password is that there's 4 doors surrounding the door, where you get various lore and then also the password name. So, and you also have to do a fight, so I recreated the different fights and the fact that you go through those 4 different rooms by having the 4 red coin keys in each of these little room sections here to represent getting the Demon Gate password. And once you do the 4 rooms, you're able to get through the Demon Gate. And after that is Lady Harken number 2. So I tried to make Lady Harken 2 a bit different. One thing is that since it's not underwater, she moves a lot faster, and I also put these bouncy things because it looks like her safety buoy attack, so kind of thematically matches, and also put spikes so that if you hit the bouncy things wrong, you'll get shot to the spikes. But Lady Harken 2 is pretty free. The one weird thing about using the Bowser Castle aesthetic is that you have to hit the axe to finish. So even though it matched the aesthetic of Demon's Lab well to use the Bowser Castle because it's like the demon's territory, so it made sense to be like a Bowser theme. It is a bit weird using the axe there instead of the standard one-ups thing. And after Demon's Lab is Wandering Isle, it's the in-between dungeon between or before Dead Sanctuary. So it's one of the few dungeons that don't have a boss, which is fun. One weird thing about Wild Arms when recreating in Mario Maker is that almost every dungeon has a boss, which makes it very different from a standard Mario game where there's not a whole lot of boss encounters. So I've recreated the first room here pretty faithfully. You have to go through one, you gotta go up one way. If you go up the other way, it's a dead end, so it's represented by the left-hand side here. If you go up that way, it's a dead end. But if you fall in the grapple hook section, you can end up in there, so it's a way to kind of recover from that. I recreated the wyvern fights using the winged boomers. Similar to the Night Gaunt thing, so kinda... It's almost like a boss enemy becoming a regular encounter here. And this is the in-between room between the two grapple hook sections where you fight the die fighters. So the die fighters are represented by these spike ball throwing guys. I actually had another more spike ball throwing guys on the third tier there, but ended up making that room way too difficult. So I ended up removing them because it kind of made it not fun. And here's the big grapple hook room where there's a bunch of different paths and different rewards by going through different grapple hook sections. And this is also where you encounter the most wyverns through your normal play, so I threw in a couple more wyvern encounters in here. I used the heartbeat sound effect when the wyvern appears, just kind of increase the tension when they appear. The one funny thing is that the wyverns can get stuck on the grapple hooks. That's a funny thing that can happen there. So this will look really weird. There's a checkpoint right before the end of the stage, but that's just because there's a save point at the end of Wandering Isle. For pretty much no reason, there's a save point at end of Wandering Isle, so I just put in a checkpoint there because I found that funny. And of course, after Wandering Isle, on the world map I put a little pond in there. That's to represent the fact that you have to use Asgard to cross the little water section there to be able to access Dead Sanctuary. And now we're in Dead Sanctuary proper. Here there's 3 paths, and there's only one path you can go through because the other ones are blocked by statues, and only one of the statues can be moved to get through the third path. So that's represented by the thwomp that can actually move. And this is the other thwomps where you have to move the one thwomp. Oh my god! He's about to hit me. To get through the one section, I kind of changed it so that the thwomp breaks the breakable wall, where usually you'd use bombs to get through that breakable wall, but it kind of creates a cool Indiana Jones effect where it looks like you're definitely going to get killed by the thwomp, but that looks harder than it is. Like, as long as you're just holding down the B button, it won't actually catch you, as long as your timing isn't too bad. Open up my club soda. So this is one of the more generic rooms in Dead Sanctuary where it's just a hallway. I made it a bit more tricky by throwing in the ghosts. The one bad thing about throwing in ghosts like that is that it makes it so that the player stops moving in an unfun way sometimes if they don't align with it properly. These move faster, so it's less of a problem, but those big ghosts can move pretty slowly. But it made sense in that context because it's kind of a challenge to go back for the power-up. So here we got a hint: 3 is Doom. I try to avoid using English because obviously this is a multinational game, but sometimes the puzzles require some simple hints. So here's the 3 is Doom. That's to recreate all the hints you get in Dead Sanctuary proper. This is the section where you gotta go through the different 3-door rooms, and there's only one path, that otherwise all the paths are blocked by statues, and the statues are represented by the different thwomps. I have a bit of a brain fart here because I can't remember where I'm actually supposed to go, but then I remember. And I make it through. So, back to the 3 is Doom here. So this is the recreation of the 4 statue problem where you have to blow up the green statue. So to kind of recreate that, you stand at the 1, 2, and 4 sections, but because 3 is Doom, you don't stand at the 3 section. If you do, you'll fall into a pit. So that's to represent the green statue, that is the fake one. And if you stand at the 3 correct statues, you're able to get the 3 red coins and progress. Nice place there where I go through the door and exit the door with a different power-up. Because this Boomerang 2 is an effort. So once again, Boomerang is represented by Lemmy and Lightning Koopa. I actually did really good that fight, but that took a lot of re-attempts, which is why I had to splice that together. And that's Dead Sanctuary. So, something I actually want to fix for the final release is I just noticed that there's no good way to get a 1-up there with the final goalpost there. So that's something I'll want to fix. And the final level of this world is Gate Generator. So, in the overworld, I made it so that it's on a cloud to represent the fact that Gate Generator is kind of a interdimensional thing. And the first thing that happens in Gate Generator is that you fight the 3 umbrella enemies, so that's represented by the 3 wizards here with the parachutes. So the parachutes kind of represent the umbrellas, and only one of them has the key to progress. And I use the funky effect to represent the fact that you're in interdimensional space. Now, Gate Generator is all about the puzzles with Zed, where he's trying to trick you, but he's stupid, so the tricks are really dumb. So this is where you grab the heal berry to progress, and then you have to grapple hook Zed. So that's represented by the fact that Bowser Jr. drops on the grapple hook, and you have to jump off him to progress. So by jumping on him, he actually goes into the lava, and that kills Bowser Jr. and gives you the key to progress. And next is Operation Hell Thunder. In Wild Arms, it's electrocuted floor, and here it's lava. But you're able to use the Koopa shell there to go over the lava, which represents using the rollerblades. And then you can turn off Operation Hell Thunder with a switch, so that's represented here. But it's kind of annoying to do it with the Koopa because you're always jumping when you're walking. And you can't go over that section with the Koopa shell because all of the flames will kill you if you tried to do that. Here, this is the hidden switch that Zed hits on the wall. So I put that block there purposely so that when you get down here, you think, oh, there's a block up there, there might be a hidden block down here, because I can't go back and it requires a key. So that's kind of represents Zed hitting the hidden switch on the wall. This is the 4-switch problem, where when you hit the 4th switch, Zed will re-enter the room and lock you behind the 4th switch by hitting the 3rd switch. And the way to prevent that is go back to the 2nd switch and hit it again. So I represented that with the P-switch timer, where if you try to go to the 4th switch immediately, it'll end up blocking you because the P-switch will expire before you get to the key. So you actually have to go back to the 2nd switch to reset the P-switch timer. So that's the equivalent of having to go back and re-hitting the switch to prevent Zed from locking you in. Next is the Diablo encounter. Again, I recreated Diablo using assets in Mario Maker rather than using a boss monster. I used the red block because Diablo is red, and used the red Mecha Koopas to represent his bullet attack and kind of flames in general because Diablo is the fire golem. And the way to defeat him, he's being piloted by Zed, of course. But you just gotta hit the on-off switch to defeat Zed again, which gives you another key. Afterwards, this is where any block will, or any password will work. So the equivalent of that is having a bunch of blocks, and every single block has the key you need. So every single one of those blocks had a key to represent being able to enter any password. So, of course, Zekrite is represented by Bowser. I actually defeated him way too quick there. But Big Bowser, of course, is going to be our Zekrite for the game. And after defeating Bowser, he gets sent into the Gate Generator, but he takes you into the Gate Generator with him. So that's represented by the thing there sending you back and into the lava, and using that effect, representing the fact that you got sent into the Gate Generator as well. So now we're on to World 6. Rudy's arm has been removed, so now we're in the L dimension. And the cool thing about the L dimension is that it's 1,000 years in the past. So to represent being 1,000 years in the past, I use the Super Mario Bros. 1 tile set. So all throughout the game I use Super Mario World. A, because it's the best tile set. And also, for this twist. I didn't want to use any other tile sets so that when you get to this world, it has some impact. So yeah, traveling to the past makes it Super Mario Bros. 1. So this is Forest Mound. Forest Mound isn't really a dungeon in the original game. It's just kind of in between transporter. So I made it more of a maze here to recreate the fact that you can kind of go through the maze to get different items like the crest grass and full Libra. So I kind of expanded on it a bit here, and also put in a bunch of different enemies to kind of make it so that you're in a weird different world here, and made different blocks here. This is Wild Arms! Recreated in Mario Maker 2, of course. So yeah, just a bit of an expansion on Forest Mound, just kind of use the blocks to force you to go different paths. Nothing too difficult here, there's plenty of power-ups here. But just kind of a fun little thing to do. I put the Fire Flower at the start of the stage to represent the Arnica herb that's in the Forest Mound on the Phil Gaia side. In terms of difficulty curves, Gate Generator was meant to be the local peak, and World 6 is kind of meant to be a difficulty reset before it gets super hard again. Forest Prison was... I say this a few times, but this might have actually been my favorite level to recreate, because this literally recreates every transition in Forest Prison. Now, I say that, but that's not quite true, because the amount of transitions you can have in Mario Maker is less than the amount of transitions in Forest Prison. So what I did for some screens is that I combined them, so some transitions ended up being moved so that multiple screens are a single screen in Mario Maker 2. But every transition is otherwise recreated, so the paths are all the same. The one thing is that it's kind of reversed on the first screen, because you start on the right side, whereas to progress in the original Mario Maker or Wild Arms, you go right or go left, and you start on the left side here, sorry. So you have to go right in Mario Maker, and there's no way around that. Other than that, it pretty much faithfully recreates all the different transitions. And I had a lot of fun because Forest Prison is meant to be a prison for monsters, so I put a bunch of sections here where giant monsters are blocked off, and they're just kind of there aesthetically to represent like the super dangerous monsters being imprisoned, and then having a bunch of lower level enemies kind of wandering about. And I know the path through, but I kind of just wandered around here, and it took a while to actually complete, just to kind of show off all the different aspects of Forest Prison. And this is the one where someone had an 18-second speedrun on, because once you know the path, you can just pretty much immediately go to the end. Yeah, this was a lot of... I actually had to break out paint.net to be able to recreate this stage, because I had to figure out which screens to merge together, which screens to be on which layout, because this was done using a series of doors and pipes. Pipes lead to the other layout or section of the level, and doors lead to the same section. And I believe you can only have 7 pipe transitions, and then 4 pipe transitions per section. So I had to really work out how the transitions were going to work for this level, for it to be able to recreate the Forest Prison in its entirety. The one thing that isn't really recreated is the fact that you get the Life Guardian in the Forest Prison. I think I might have just put a power-up there, but there's nothing that really locks your progression, because in Forest Prison you can go through the entire dungeon without getting the Life Guardian, but then you have to go back, and that's annoying. So I didn't want to lock progression behind finding the Life Guardian equivalent. Or, yeah, Life Guardian. So just kind of made it this huge maze here. Okay, maybe I got lost a little too much, because I ran out of things to say. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Probably my most time-consuming in terms of actually recreating the level. Took a lot of forethought. Whereas some of the levels I could kind of make as I went. I couldn't just go into this and start placing blocks. I had to work out how big each room could be because there's also a limited amount of space in Mario Maker 2. It's a pretty generous amount of space. I never really ran into that issue. The bigger issue was the number of transitions. And this is the end here. So Forest Prison was a lot of fun. Probably not super fun to play. I'm not sure. Because you'll probably just get super lost. But for the speedrunner, they probably had fun working out what the optimal path was and getting that 17-second time. So this is the first of 2 optional dungeons, and the only optional dungeon I'll actually show off. This is Heaven Corridor. In the original Wild Arms, this is not in the L dimension, but for a couple reasons I put it here. A, because it fits kind of, yes, what Heaven's Corridor is going for. It's kind of a non-threatening challenge dungeon with a bunch of puzzles. I also use the Sunshine theme here to kind of make it more fun. I'm actually going to rewind this because I talk too much. And B is this is in this world because there's a mechanic in Super Mario Bros. 1 which I wanted to keep to the L dimension that I needed to faithfully recreate a Heaven Corridor. So there I put a hint. This is where you hit the pot to progress in Heaven Corridor. So I made a bunch of blocks there, and the POW block represented which block you need to hit on these note blocks. This is to represent the book telling you which pot to hit to progress. This next section is meant to recreate the various teleporters that will send you back to the start. So I made these falling platforms various different lengths, so if you're walking on them expecting them all to be the same length, you actually end up falling. And at the bottom here is a conveyor belt that will send you all the way back to the start, so that kind of recreates the teleporter back to the start. And here is the reason why it's in Super Mario Bros. 1 tile set. The SMB2 mushroom will jump when you jump. So in Heaven Corridor, there's 3 sets of puzzles where there's this orb that recreates your movement, and you have to lock it into a certain position to retrieve it. So to recreate that puzzle, I needed the SMB2 mushroom to move with my jumps and to navigate these various obstacle courses here in order to retrieve it. And the unique thing about the SMB2 mushroom is that it lets you super jump by charging. So I'm able to do that here, and that's the only way to progress through that pipe. So that's the main reason why this is in the L dimension. And this is the puzzle where you have to use a teardrop at the second or the first set of trees of 2. So I use that hidden block above the locked door because when they see a locked door, they'll probably jump thinking there's a hidden block there. But that doesn't give the key, but the tree beforehand, it's a hint that that one also has a hidden block. So if you jump on that one, that's the key that you need, which is the same as where you need to use the teardrop at the end of Heaven's Corridor. So that's the optional dungeon I'll be showing off. The other one, the Abyss, I won't be showing off here. I'll probably make a separate video of it. The one reason I don't show it off is that it's not complete, but also, of what is complete, it's also a really trolly level, which won't really fit with the rest of this game, where I try not to make trolly levels, but the Abyss, it kind of felt appropriate. So this is Dolomatalika. This dungeon has really weird puzzles, so I tried to recreate them as much as I could. This is the door puzzle where you have to rotate around the room counterclockwise to go back in time. So to hint at this, I have the center show -3 hours, and you have to go counterclockwise 3 times, hitting these blocks. And this is a thing where there's actually state being saved at the top using various on-off blocks. So it actually remembers how many times you've gone around the room, and it'll only work if you go exactly 3 times counterclockwise. So that's the way I recreated the counterclockwise room in the original game. There's a bunch of rooms where they use the illusion stairs. I couldn't quite recreate the illusion, so I just kind of made a bunch of rooms with different stairs. It's pretty messed up. You don't see what you're doing, there's a bunch of things that want to kill you. So this is the room section where there's the 5 bookshelves that tell you whether or not you want to open or close chests, so I represent that with the 5 P blocks there, 3 of which were active, 2 of which were empty, showing which ones you want to open, which is equivalent to the 5 bookshelves. And then when you go in here, you want to hit those 5 blocks, or 3 of those 5, or 2 of those 5 blocks, the 2 ones that were empty, and that allows you to hit or make the P-switch available here, which you can then hit to progress. So that's the equivalent of the bookshelf puzzle in Dilemma Alika. And I didn't use this Koopaling for any other reason, so I figure just kind of trip you up, I threw him in Dilemma Alika. He's meant to kind of represent the master of Dilemma Alika. And this is the infamous question 2-door puzzle in Dilemma Alika. So I recreated it by having those 3 pipes at the top there representing the color order you have to go through. And if you go through the pipes in the wrong color order, you'll get sent back to the start. So it's the equivalent of if you go through the 2 doors puzzle in the incorrect sequence, you'll get sent back to the start. So you have to go through blue, red, and orange as represented at the top there. So we've got to go blue, then orange, or blue, red, then orange. I was like, wait, what are you doing past me? And doing it in the correct sequence leads to the spiral room, where you can have to go through the spiral to get to the end. I kind of threw that Koopaling in again. He's meant to represent the Devil Rune guy that's kind of testing you with this puzzle. And getting to the end completes Dilemma Alika. And I said, which level did I say was the most experimental? The Mother Fight. The Mother Fight I said was the most experimental, but that was a lie. Because the end of this world is Rudy's Dream. And this is probably the weirdest level I made. Where this level is essentially a recreation of the cutscene you get when Cecilia enters Rudy's mind. So Mario's meant to represent Rudy here. This is where he lifts the big box and throws it and freaks out all the kids. The jerk Koopas up there represent the kids. Then he goes to the cliffside with his grandpa, so the ghost on the dry bones represents Zeppet. And then the empty dry bone shell represents that Zeppet has died and that's his grave. And it's on, you know, that weird Wild Arms cliff thing. And then Rudy starts having a nightmare where Siegfried shows up because Siegfried cut off his arm. So because Bowser represents Siegfried, I made it an auto-scroller here where you kind of have to run away from Siegfried, as he's just burninating the town and you can't really do anything about it. And the end of the dream is Rudy going back to Zeppet, so Zeppet's back here. But the coins spell out wake up because Cecilia's trying to wake Rudy up from his comfortable dream. So when you turn the dream off, Elizabeth shows up, which is represented by the female Koopa. And you also get the SMB2 power-up because SMB2 is all about waking up from a dream. So thematically appropriate, and defeating Elizabeth will complete Rudy's dream. You get the key. And then you get the Love Guardian, so we got the nice heart here and the love overlay. And that is Rudy's dream. Probably the most ridiculous level, but I love it. And that is World 6 completed. So upon completion of World 6 is kind of when you start entering Endgame of Wild Arms. So, appropriately enough, World 7 is Bowser Castle themed. And the first level is Gemini's Corpse. So when you first enter Gemini's Corpse, there's a secret room where you get the sword hint. for the fast run also unlocks the ability to get the sword rune. So I have that give the cape because it's kind of Mario's melee attack to represent kind of Jack's ability as being melee attacks. This here is where you bomb the wall to enter the secret room to get the gem. In Gemini's Corpse, it's all about carrying the gems forward, and in this level, the gems are represented by the dome shells, because you have to carry these dome shells forward throughout to progress throughout the level. So you kind of have to carry these with you, and also bomb some walls to progress properly. And it also helps to equip the dome shell because of the spikes. You don't want to jump into those spikes, so you equip the dome shell. And you want to keep carrying the dome shell like you do with the gems, because otherwise you'll have to go back and retrieve one. So I use these off blocks to kind of destroy the dome, because there's a checkpoint here, so you have to keep in mind that people will be starting from the checkpoint, so it's kind of a reset point for the level. So you want to carry both of these dome shells forward, because this is the section where you have to use two crystals to fall into the pit in Wild Arms. So use the first one to hit the on-off block, and the second one to activate a P-switch by hitting that one there, and that allows me to fall into the pit. And when you fall into the pit, you cause a calamity that causes the punching glove to fall. So the punching glove is represented by the POW block here. Lets you POW through those enemies there, which represent the two statues in the next room. And also you have to POW block or punch glove the grapple hook thing so that you can grapple hook to the next section. So I represent that by having you POW block those pointy plants there, and then you have to grapple hook through. But if you keep the cape, here's the Mecha Drake fight. Turns out if you keep the cape throughout the entire level, this fight is very trivial, because when you spin, actually, crouch there to assert dominance. That fight's usually harder, trust me. But if you keep the cape throughout the entire level, it's kind of a joke. And then you return to the start with the key, which lets you progress to the end. Originally, I had a Mecha Drake represented by a giant level asset, similar to Diablo, but it just didn't really work and kind of looked really stupid. So I switched it to a bunch of Mecha Koopas, because they're basically Mecha Drakes. So next up we have Pandemonium. The first section has that on-off. So Pandemonium has a very direct corollary to the on-off switches with the on-off doors, with the blue and red gems. So pretty much a one-to-one with that entrance, and also I blocked off the entrance to the prison using that. That also serves to help with checkpointing, kind of resetting the state for if you restart from a checkpoint. This is the Trax fight. I used this guy for all of the fights in Pandemonium, with different levels of difficulty, just because I didn't use him for any other major fight, and he's a decent enemy to use in combination with Rising Lava, which I use in this. So here's where Handpan goes on his own to unlock the cell. So I have Mario throw the Koopa shell off screen so that Handpan can unlock the cell for him, because he ends up in prison. And here I represent the three characters being split by having three different paths throughout this section, representing the three different characters. And you have to get the red key coin at the end of each section to progress. And I have the Rising Lava here so that you have incentive to kind of switch paths, so it's kind of like switching between the characters. Rudy kind of got the short end of the stick here because his path is the lowest one. So it's the one that's covered in lava the majority of the time, whereas Jack's path is the topmost. And This is more of a thematic recreation than a one-to-one. I tried to recreate it as much as possible, but it was pretty much impossible, so it's just about kind of freeing up the paths on the different sections by going through the other paths using the giant thwomps and then getting the red coins. This section is really difficult if you lose the shell. So it really becomes worth it if you lose the shell to go back to the start to re-get it, because without the shell, that lava is going to mess you up real bad. And I was too slow here, so I didn't make the rotation, so this is actually going to lose me some time here if this was a speedrun. So you got to get that coin and return to the door before the lava gets back to kill you. But now that we got the 3 red coin keys, we can progress past the prison. But when you get to the end of the prison, you fight the Demon Prophet and Wild Arms, so we will be seeing that fight shortly. Threw in a power-up here because it would suck to die here after doing that entire section. I have the Rising Lava so that the longer this fight goes on, the more dangerous it gets. Once again, I use this guy with the bouncing balls. The bouncing balls themselves don't kill you, but if they catch you in a weird way, they can send you back and into the lava real bad. By killing Demon Prophet lets you progress again. And the key and P-switch or on-off block here are just because of checkpointing, making it so that if you used a checkpoint, you might end up in a weird situation there. So like in the original Wild Arms, you go through the original section here, but you get past the Trax fight because the on-off switches are inverted so you don't fall into the pit again. And next is the Balam fight. There's the Rising Lava here, so you can't wait too long in that section. And because Balam is actually a monster that has 3 heads stacked on top of each other, I recreated that by having 3 of the Koopalings stacked on top of each other here. And you're not actually meant to defeat them by killing them, you're just meant to get over them, which is difficult because there are 3 stacked on top of each other, but because of the bouncing balls, you can get over them if you get the right rotation. But they can also easily send you back into the Rising Lava as well. So it's kind of a unique fight using that bouncing ball mechanic. Next up we have Arctica Castle. I could only use one screen for this fight, or this dungeon, because the other screen's used for something else. So this is more of a thematic recreation. I wanted to... There's not much to the Arctica dungeon in the original anyways. So I wanted to represent kind of a decrepit castle. It's not in use and it's kind of collapsing, so all the stones here represent like the roof collapsing in on it, and the ice is meant to show the elements of the continent getting in, and it's kind of all frozen over. Threw in the wizards because they transform the ice and stone blocks, so they kind of work well with this design. And I gave the option of the cape and fire plant here, but you can go with whichever. And the big thing with Arctica Castle is the giant elevator section, so threw in a big elevator here and used the water drop sound overlay to kind of create atmosphere for this section. And then it's the Arctica 3 fight, or Lady Harkin 3 fight. So for the third refights for the Quarter Knights, I put a spike shell on top of them to prevent you from jumping on them, so you had to kill them through other means. There's like a small pixel where you can actually hit them, but it's easier to use the other means. And I wanted to make it a melee fight because it's the Jack-Lady Harkins duel. So I have the spike helmets coming out so you can equip them to kind of headbutt Lady Harkin for a melee-focused fight. It also makes it pretty easy because you can just keep equipping the helmet to absorb damage, but thematically it kind of makes sense, so just went with it. And defeating Lady Harkin for the final time gets you the key. And now you can leave Arctica Castle. And upon leaving Arctica Castle, you get a very special cutscene. It's the Dingle is Rising cutscene. So the second section of this map was entirely devoted to this, which is why Arctica Castle was a bit... Whoop, knocked over the mic. Which is why Arctica Castle was a bit shorter, but was worth it to get this cutscene in here. So this is Dingle rising from the ocean, which looks very poisonous. I wanted it to be night, so I had to use the nighttime theme. I used the arrows to simulate the fact that it's rising instead of me just going down the level. And use the heartbeat and lightning sound effects to kind of recreate the various aspects of that cutscene. So that's Kadingle rising from the ocean at the end of the Arctica Castle section. Which is kind of amazing. It's kind of dumb, but kind of amazing. And of course, that means that Kadingle is the final level of this world. As it should be. And the Abyss is over there in the clouds, but we're not going to be doing that today. So Kadingle, I use the Mario Kart theme like I did with that cutscene there, to kind of give it a unique feel. That's Asgard letting me cross the Poison River to Kadingle, and this is the Boomerang 3 fight. Like Lady Harkin 3, he's got a spike shield to prevent jumping on him. So in this case, I have to use Luciad, who requires 2 hits because it's got wings, to do damage to Boomerang. So gotta get Luciad down and then use Luciad to do damage. So makes a bit of a unique fight for Boomerang 3 here. And defeating Boomerang 3 gets you the key to enter Kadingle. And use the pipe to transition inside. And so now we're inside Kadingle. The enemies are mostly here just to make it seem like there's danger more than actual danger. It's more about the puzzles in Kadingle. So this is the first one where you have to go left to hit a switch so that you can progress. So represented by hitting that switch to allow the thwomp to destroy those blocks. And then there's a bunch of other switches you have to hit in a certain order. So this kind of recreates that order that you gotta hit. And then you gotta move the statue to unlock a door, so that's represented by that thwomp there. And then there's the section where you have to push a statue into a pit, and then push that statue into place to progress, so that's represented here by pushing this thwomp into the pit, and then pushing it into the proper position to progress. Now next is the 3-switch door. So I couldn't quite recreate it entirely faithfully, so I kind of created my own puzzle that kind of spiritually recreates the issue, where you have to have both thwomps in their starting state, like you have to have all 3 switches in their starting state to progress. But you have to do that while you're on the bottom floor instead of on the top floor. So you have to unlock the spike ball coming through, but then have the thwomps on top so that the spike ball can make it all the way through the room to destroy the block so that you can progress. So that's how I recreated the 3-switch door here. So next is more of a there's no real puzzle in this section of the Kadingle. So I threw that guy in just as a bit of a danger element. You're usually going to have a power-up there, and if you don't, there's still a way to get past it. If you jump at the right time, you can actually jump over it. Those 2 thwomps represent the 2 statues beside the Nectar treasure chest. They can't actually hit you, it's just kind of meant to be like, oh god, they're going to hit me, but they don't actually. Some more just general navigation. That's where you get the metal shield and Wild Arms. This is where you have to bomb the thing, but if you wait too long, it will redo itself. This is one of the things I might redo because the calling makes it so that the bombs respawn too late, so that the timing isn't really tight. This is the green section. There's 2 green sections in Kadingle where it just represents you going higher in the tower. So I represent that with the pipes showing the green. And the pipes going upwards representing you going higher up in the tower. This is another one of the bomb things where the bombs will start spawning to hit the off switch. So if you take too long, they'll reset it, so you have to do it again. And the other green room put in the fireballs coming out as a bit of a danger element. And because Kadingle is, you know, supposed to be challenging, threw in these guys just as a enemy challenge. And the one thing you definitely, or maybe you can, but you cannot recreate the lights out puzzle like the Ender Kadingle has, so I just kind of did my best, but not really happy with how this puzzle turned out, so I might redo it. But there's no good way to recreate the lights out puzzle in Mario Maker 2. But after that, you get the Alzad 2 fight. Because it's a 2 fight, he doesn't get a spike above him. So you can jump on him as normal. Once again, he has the Esperanzas represented on the side by Lightning Mecha Koopas and Flying Koopa Troopas. And defeating Alzad 2 gets you to the end of Kadingle, which lets you teleport upwards. So that's represented by the end of the stage having you go up this elevator. And that's the end of World 7. And there's only one world left, World 8. But you might be thinking, Malduke's only one dungeon, but I've recreated Malduke using 5 dungeons, which will make sense. So the first dungeon is Malduke Traffic Area. I used the space theme because Malduke is the new moon. And I used Nighttime Bowser's Castle, because it gives you this anti-grav effect, which is just swimming. Because it's like you're in space. So it's kind of like you just got to the new moon and you're still kind of outside of the colony, so it kind of thematically makes sense. And to represent the damage tiles, I had all these pipes spawning activated giant bob-bombs. So you have to hit that switch to deactivate the damage tiles. And here we have the Arc Smash chest, which I have kind of somewhat dangerously with the spiky plant on the springy thing there. And that piranha plant looks dangerous, but because of how the culling works, as long as you're moving at a decent clip, it won't actually jump at you and kill you if you're moving decently fast through the area. And here's the guitar, where you have to hit the switch to get the guitar. Because it's a Jack tool, I made it the feather, because Jack is all about melee attacks. And here's the section where you have to throw a handpan to destroy the damage tiles. So I represented that with the spiky turtles. And you have to throw the Koopa shell to destroy them. And the pipes are represented by the background being that tile set there. Now, with the pipe, you're going inside the traffic area, so you're back under the effects of gravity. And there's more tiles that you have to throw a handpan at there, so represented them there. And we're back outside. It's good to have the anti-grav here, because it's more of a top-down section with going through all the pipes. This is the giant pipe section in the Malduke traffic area. You can go downwards to the statue test hint for trump card, but I'm just going to progress through the dungeon. If you want to see that for yourself. Because I have full power-ups anyway, so there's no real reason to do that. And to kind of make the pipe section a bit of a maze, I put a bunch of doors in. But only one door leads to the proper progression area. This section is where you have to go on the falling platforms, and then there's a grapple hook that you have to use at the end. It's a bit easier than it is in Wild Arms, because you have to switch to the grapple hook, whereas the grapple hook's already there for you to use. And then just have kind of a challenging enemy encounter at the end of the traffic area. I threw in these thwomps and some wizards here. Because there's no proper boss at the end of the traffic area. And that's the traffic area done. So the way that Malduke ends up being 5 different dungeons is the 3 different sub-areas you go to get the 3 different items. There's the mining area, there's the residential area, and there's the statue area. So the 3 middle dungeons here are going to be those 3. The first one being the mining area. So the mining area has the 6 different items at the bottom, and only one of them is the real item, the eye. So this recreates it by having the different paths like you would have in the actual mining area. I use the moles here because they're fast, and they're also enemies that will drop down really quickly, so they kind of act as this Plinko effect, where if you don't defeat them, they'll just keep dropping down and build up. So it's kind of a cool mechanic for this top-down dungeon, where they'll just become more and more of a problem. They will get called at a certain point if they fall too far, so it won't become like unbearably populated, but will kind of cause a lot of moles to fall on top of you. So it kind of creates this cool effect. Also, because they're moles and this is a mining area, it kind of fits. So the center of the Malduke mining area has the Sado fight, and also the thing that lets you know whether or not you have the real eye. So I'm going to grab the fake eye here, one of the fake eyes. So I recreated the fake eyes with various different items. So for this one I have the smooth helmet shell. So if we then go through the pipe, we have this little section here that shows you the different items you can get in the different areas. So because I was in the 4th area, I got the smooth shell, and we can see we need the P-switch to progress. And we see that the P-switch is the 5th item shown there. So you can suss out that you need the 5th item in this section to progress. And just as you can climb down all these sections, or go down these sections, you can climb back up them through platforming. But they're a bit dangerous because of the moles will be falling down on top of you instead of going down with you. So you kind of got to be careful about falling moles. To make up for the fact that there can be some BS mole falling, I did put a lot of super mushrooms in this area, so you can kind of keep refreshing your power-up so that you can take a mole hit. So we'll grab this P-switch here and go back to the central red pipe. So this represents having the proper eye for this section, which will let you go through the main Malduke door. So these 3 dungeons are going to be a bit smaller than like the full-on levels I was showing previously, but that's just because they're based on the sub-areas in Malduke. So this whole world is kind of meant to just be just one gigantic dungeon. So these are just kind of sub-areas. So now that we have the proper item to progress, we can get through this. And we get the 1-up. So I guess you can get 1-up from the floor, so I guess I don't have to fix, was it Dead Sanctuary that had the floor 1-up? So maybe I don't have to go back for that one. Depends on if you can get speed to get that high jump. What's up, Chomsky? And the next area is the residential area. So residential area is a very unique dungeon in Wild Arms where you can do it in 10 seconds if you know what to do. Because the gimmick of the dungeon is that everyone tells you lies. So at the start of this level, it says all lies. So the first hint you get here is secret in well, which basically means the secret is not in the well. This arrow is a lie, so it points to a hidden block, but the hidden block is just a coin. And this door is locked, so it's implied that you need some sort of key to progress. So in the well, when I jumped in the well, represented by the ice blocks there, it was a hidden block, but it just had a coin. And here it says the graves are empty, which is the hint that the key is in the graves. And here is just a weird stage area, where if you find the hidden block here, it'll just be another coin. Because the stage doesn't have anything. And there's also arrows pointing up here, which implies there might be something above, which there is, but it's just another empty hidden coin block. Or just a hidden block that just has a coin. And so, cool thing, when you go through the pipe, I use the nighttime theme for the underground, which reverses the world, so it's kind of like when you go through the pipe, the world flips upside down, which kind of adds to the disorientation of this level. And this room says the statue, which of course is another lie. So you have to progress through this underground area, kind of upside down. So it kind of adds to the weirdness of this level. Another lie there, because that's another obvious place for the hidden block to be. So if you go up here, here's the statue. Lovingly created using red blocks. To get to the top, you need to use this grapple implementation. And in the helm area, there's another hidden block, but of course it just has a coin. But if you go to the graveyard, which is represented, you can see the dry bone shells buried underneath the various gravestones. And if you go behind the main gravestone, you get the key inside the hidden block. So that's how I recreated the residential area in the Wild Arms Malduk in Mario Maker 2. So with the key, we can now go through that door and progress to the end of the stage. There's one more sub-area, that's the statue area. And the statue area, like Pandemonium, uses the red-blue doors, which actually, like, perfectly corresponds to the on-off blocks and the on-off switch. So this is pretty much a one-to-one recreation of the statue area puzzle, where you go through this top-level area, and you go through this second room here. Those three fire flowers represent the three high-level armors you get in that room. And then you go through this cliff area where you cannot go back up the cliff, and you can hit the switches. And this reverses the on-off switches or blocks here. But you can't immediately progress to the switches that move the statues in Wild Arms, so those are represented by the red key coins. And so the first pass, you just have to blow up the bomb, or blow up the blocks, like you have to blow up the rocks in Wild Arms. So the statue area requires 3 loops at minimum in the main game, so that's recreated here as well. So on the second pass, you do the same for the first section as you do the second one here. And then you can go back through the first section because you blew up the rock by going into it from above. And because the on-off blocks are reversed, you can then get the red coin. And then the final third pass you have to do. Yeah, I just kind of take the hit there. I kind of made some debate thwomps there by having most of them not go down, but one of them do. Just kind of add... The statues are, throughout the game, were kind of represented by the thwomps, so this being the statue area, kind of made sense to have the thwomps be the statues. And also, the giant dry bones are kind of statuesque, so threw them in as well. So getting the 2 red coins gets you the key that lets you go to the end of the statue area. So yeah, that's a pretty faithful recreation of the original statue area from Malduk. And that's the 3 sub-areas done, which means there's only one thing left to do. It's time for the final level of World 8. So, one thing I actually took from Ultra Code F, this is called Area 51, which is what it is referred to when you get the burial fight. So this is kind of a combination of the burial fight from Wild Arms 1 and the Belzouk fight from Ultra Code F, where in Ultra Code F you actually fight Final Belzouk here. So this is Belzouk 3, like the other third fights, he has a spike shell, and the mechanic of... Oh crap. When did the mic die? I'm gonna rewind a bit. For some reason the mic muted at some point. I'll go to the end of the statue area. Let's go back to the start of Area 51. So yeah. So this is Area 51. I think I probably muted around here. So yeah, this is kind of a combination of Ultra Code F and Wild Arms 1. Where Wild Arms 1 you fight Burial, which is represented by the spiky things because Burial has the lance arms. And in Ultra Code F you actually fight Final Belzouk here. So this is the return of Morton Koopa, which represents Belzouk. Like the other third fights, he has a spike on his back to prevent you from jumping on him. And he has the Bowser from Mario 3 mechanic of falling through the pits. So that's the first boss of Area 51. Next up is Siegfried. So he's represented by Big Bowser, like he was in previous incarnations. But unlike the previous fight, you can't just go under him to complete the level, you actually have to defeat him. And the way Bowser works, you can't jump on him, you have to do damage to him through various means. And the different ways of doing damage of him have different damage values. Right here we're using Big Koopa Shells because they do 6 damage, and Big Bowser has 40 health. And you also get the Fire Flower with each shot doing 1 damage. So defeating Siegfried there gets you the key and moves on to Mother Fried. So this is a combination of Siegfried and Mother Demon. So it has Siegfried there represented with Big Bowser in Mother Demon's arms. So he's kind of being clutched by the stone hand there. And Mother Demon has the same face she has from the World 4 fight, and has the same mechanic of having to shoot her in the face with the giant lightning Mecha Koopa. Well, there's a bit more going on here to create a more dangerous fight. There's a secret feather in the back there, so you can kind of get a good power up here. These lightning Mecha Koopas kind of try to block your way here from progressing, to create some danger while you're setting up for the Mecha Koopa shot to defeat Mother Demon. So here's the big Mecha Koopa you need to use. I accidentally fell here, so I need to make my way back up. Boy, I was not going to do a re-record. I lose the cape power-up in the meantime, but that's fine. Oh no! I'm small, Mario. So the interesting thing about Big Bowser is he does that upper shot, so even though he's off-screen, he still will kind of have an influence on the fight by doing the fire volley there. Hey, you two. Chomsky and Milliardo are fighting. So yeah, you want to set up the main Mecha Koopa shot. There's a lava pit down there in case you knock off the Mecha Koopa so he respawns. So you want to basically get on the other side of Mecha Koopa before he reactivates, so that you're in position for when it does the shot. So you want to bait the shot by being close to it and then jumping away so that you don't get killed by it. And shooting Mother Demon's face gives you access to the on-off switch, which lets you kill Big Bowser there, which gets you the key. And that's the end of the game. You get all these fireworks. Yay! You win, shows even. And there's a flag. Why is there a checkpoint? Oh no, it's not even over. There's my very good splice. This fight took me an hour of retries to finish. This is the Zeke 2Vi fight. This represents you returning from Malduke to Kadingle, so you're on an auto-scroll elevator back down to Kadingle from Malduke. And so you gotta defeat Zeke 2Vi before you reach the end, otherwise you'll get crushed. So like the original Zeke Fried fight, he has 40 health, so you have to do 40 damage before reaching the end. By the way, this music isn't actually in Mario Maker. But, you know, figure I'd throw it in for the final fight. Throughout this, it's not a huge danger to die by damage, but it is a big danger to get knocked off the platforms, because if you get hit by Big Bowser and the Koopa car, he'll send you flying. So you'll very likely get killed by that. But there's constantly power-ups. I actually killed him way too quick here. So I ended up having to cut up some of this elevator, because there's a bunch of me just going down the elevator because I killed him super quick. But eventually you reach the end of the elevator back to Kadingle, so this is the top of Kadingle here, like you saw at the end of Kadingle. So by killing Big Bowser, you get the key there, and you get to the end of Kadingle. And you use Asgard to escape before it all collapses there. And that's the end of Wild Arms Mario Maker 2. So I'm gonna let the credits play out, then we'll come back for final words. Oh my god, the sync. I kind of cheated because, you know, I edited it together to get that sync perfectly. So yeah, that's going to be it for Wild Arms X Mario Maker. It was a lot of fun to do. Learned a lot about level design.